But let's talk right now about China hacking the Ministry of Defence to target military personnel. It's emerged that 270,000 military personnel's personal finances, addresses, names could have been leaked to the Chinese authorities. They are suspected of hacking an all-government organisation, well, a company which effectively handles their payroll for those in the Army, the Navy and in the RAF. Well, let's talk about this right now with Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, CBE. He's a former NATO commander and a former Royal Navy commander as well. Good morning to you.
Yeah, hi, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Well, I imagine as a veteran that your information will be among those that have been released or hacked by the Chinese government. The Defence Secretary Grant Shapps is going to make a statement to MPs later in the Commons today. Whether or not he's going to confirm that it is the Chinese who are suspected or not. My first question to you is just discussing all morning is I kind of assumed this is the sort of thing China did anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, we're under attack all the time from China, Russia, Iran, and a whole host of criminals as well. So I don't know why anybody's surprised. What I think the public will be surprised about is that the head of diversity in most government departments gets paid twice as much as the head of cybersecurity.
Nailed it, Chris. And that is the issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So, hey, we might not be very effective, but hey, we're diverse, so that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, let's just worry about whether or not it's someone who's black or gay or woman who is flying the jets rather than someone who can actually fly the jets well. But this is the thing. We know that this hacking goes on. We know that cybersecurity is a massive, massive issue. We've had cyber attacks on the NHS, on everywhere. We would expect among the places where cybersecurity would be very, very strict would be the Ministry of Defence. And yet we know British teenagers have been able to hack into the Department of Defence in the United States quite easily, where people had passwords which were password, things like that. So I imagine it's not quite as hard as many would suspect to get into the MOD's computers either.
Julia, it's a question of accountability. Nobody and everybody's accountable. When I used to serve down in Devonport Dockyard, the magazines have sort of officials' houses on top of them, which meant that the people who were responsible for the magazines actually lived on top of the magazines. Guess what? In 200 years, we never had a magazine explosion. We're just not making people accountable. My question will be, right, who gets nailed for this particular breach? Name that person, dismiss them. And I'm afraid to say, unless we inject some rigour and discipline into our procedures across all government departments, this will just be a feature of the future.
I think you're right. Accountability is the key thing. Yeah. If you've CC'd everyone in the email about some security issue, well, that's fine. Everyone's accountable, so no one's accountable. However, is it even possible to guard against, a major nation state like China willing to do anything and everything with spies everywhere? They'll have spies among the cleaning staff at the MOD, for goodness sake. Probably have spies among some of the actual military personnel at a senior level. How can you guard against that?
Julia, we used to do it during the Cold War against the Russians. We just have to introduce procedures that actually enable us to do that. So I'll give you an example. It used to be impossible to hack into our ballistic missile submarine systems. Why? Because they were pre-digital. They were analog systems. Now, if it means we have to go to pen and paper and non-digital systems again to actually prove ourselves secure, then we've got to do it. It's as simple as that. I used to have a symbol in one of my units when I was commanding, which had a bayonet going through a laptop, saying that, at the end of the day, a bayonet actually will work when a laptop won't.
Yeah.
So we've got to get real. This is the issue. One of the biggest problems we've got in trying to hack into Chinese systems, of course, is they don't have any Mandarin speakers. They've got loads of English speakers. We've got to arm ourselves against hostile powers who want to do us harm.
Well, we're always fighting the last war. That's the trouble, aren't we? Whether it's the kind of uniforms or the tanks or the fights, we're always working on the last war. Whereas, in fact, we should be working on the next one. The thing that amazes me is how we spoke to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith about this. Who's been very clear about this as a politician in the last hour. But it's still stunning to me how many people in top levels of government and in finance and every other area seem to be they've got their heads in the sand when it comes to the threat from China. They had their heads in the sand when it it came to the threat from Russia. They were all surprised when Russia said we don't believe. Well, Putin said that that we don't believe that Ukraine is an independent nation state, and they put 120,000 troops on the border. It was a complete surprise to them when they invaded. Russia told us they were going to do, and then they did it. China are telling us what they're going to do. They've been buying up the world's natural resources, the Belt and Road policy. They're in control of virtually every crucial every crucial item that goes into pretty much every modern bit of technology, from magnets to every mineral to everything else. They're going to be in control of all the aspects of modern life. They've bought up billions in gold. Ready, so if they're sanctioned, they can withstand it. They're spending huge proportion of their GDP on the military. They've said that they don't believe, for instance, that Taiwan is an independent nation state. I mean, other than literally saying in big neon sign, we're going to invade an ally of yours very soon, what you going to do about it, West? They couldn't be more clear. And I'm not sure the West has a clue what it's going to do about it.
It's going to surrender, Julia. These are all the signals we're giving at the moment. If you're going to deter people, you actually have to be prepared to go to war. At the moment, our opponents, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, reckon we'd never do it. Yeah. And I'm afraid to say, if you look on Twitter in particular now, we've got large numbers of people who think we should lose. Now, that's quite extraordinary. Now, the key problem is when you are running a dictatorship, you don't have to worry about elections. Our politicians are very low quality across the board. They're constantly obsessed by being elected next time. You can't be strategic or think about these things if all you're worried about is elections. Robert Peel, fantastic prime minister in the 19th century, said, we are going to lose the next election, but I am going to repeal the Corn Laws. And the cabinet said, you can't do that. He said, look, for the good of the country, we're going to repeal the Corn Laws. And our trade quadrupled. Yes, they did lose the next election.
But he did the right thing.
Yeah, he did
I don't think we have politicians who do the right thing, even though it might be unpopular at the time. But again, it's about a lot of it, as we're seeing, whether it's Hamas and Israel, as we're seeing with Russia and Ukraine, a lot of it is about the PR war. It's the online war. And what do you make, by the way, just finally, you've got Xi Jinping on a little tour of Europe. He's just been welcomed in France by Emmanuel Macron and his wife. We've got Vladimir Putin. He's just basically done his first sort of big statement after being inaugurated for goodness knows how many times as the Russian president. He's been in power, 24 years there. I mean, these world leaders, I mean, Putin goes through the motions of an election, but if you kill off all the opposition leaders, it's a bit easier to win. And Xi Jinping, again, that's a complete farce, what goes on in China in terms of the pretense of elections. What do you make of those two world leaders having been, gallivanting around the world stage with a red carpet rolled out to them for many years?
Well, it was the same between 1936 and 1939. At one stage, we were going to welcome Goering to come and meet the king and queen at the time. And everybody was saying, well, this might be a bit dodgy. But just look back. People suck up to dictators and it's in their interest. We've had multinational corporations going out to sort of lie at Xi Jinping's feet. And I remember what Mao said. We'll give them the rope and we'll hang them with it. That's how it's going to be.
Indeed. Always so good to talk to you, Dr. Chris Parry. Thank you very much indeed.